Hello, I'm the Analyst, and normally I talk about Hollywood's biggest box office flops. Today, however, I'm looking at reboots. Oftentimes, franchises are forced to make a fresh start after a particularly disappointing entry, and in honor of the release of Kong, Skull Island, which aims to reboot the King Kong franchise, we'll be counting down the top 10 most successful franchise reboots. We'll be counting these down based not only on their individual box office success, but also their continuations as well. How much mileage they gave their respective franchises. Number 10, Halloween, 2007. In 2002, the Halloween franchise opened Resurrection, which killed off Laurie Strode and tried to apply Michael Myers to the MTV era. Unfortunately, this basically ended most hopes for the franchise, and thus Rob Zombie swooped in to save it, remaking the original in an attempt to restart the franchise. While generally panned, the remake set a few box office records, and ultimately made a solid 80 million worldwide, and would ultimately launch a sequel, which didn't do as well and ultimately stalled out the franchise again. Number 9. The Amazing Spider-Man. Much like our last entry, in 2002, Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire successfully turned Spider-Man into a box office phenomenon that spawned 2 sequels. However, after that second sequel, which was hampered by executive meddling throwing in far too many villains, Sam Raimi refused to return unless allowed to create the film his way. So Sony simply decided to reboot the franchise, this time with Mark Webb directing and Andrew Garfield as the Web Slinger. While audiences didn't quite flock to this at the same rate as the original films, it still made over 750 million worldwide, and Sony thus decided to turn this into a cinematic universe. Unfortunately, the sequel wound up being one of the biggest superhero letdowns in history, which I'm going to go over in another video, which is why it's only number 9. Number 8. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The puppetry-heavy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series would ultimately have 3 outings, ending with the disappointing third outing, which took the Turtles to Japan in the past. Following a modest animated feature in 2007, producer Michael Bay relaunched the Turtles in live action, following waves of online criticism for a whitewashed Shredder, which was eventually reverted, CG Turtles, who were originally supposed to be aliens, and Megan Fox's casting. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made over 490 million worldwide, only for its sequel, Out of the Shadows, to only make half of that, and once again, stall the franchise. Number 7. Mad Max Fury Road. This one's a bit iffy, as George Miller's 4th outing in the Wastelands of the Apocalypse served as both a sequel and a reboot of the franchise, but we're going to be counting it as a reboot. It did replace lead actor Mel Gibson with Tom Hardy as the titular Max. When it opened, however, it became hailed as a modern action classic and ended up with over 360 million worldwide. While it didn't exactly achieve theatrical profitability given its massive 250 million production and marketing budget, it's certainly given some new life into the franchise, as Warner Brothers is now looking at a spin-off film based on Charlize Theron's Imperator Furiosa. Number 6. Godzilla, 2014. The King of the Lizards had an American take done in 1998. And while modestly successful at the box office, making nearly 380 million worldwide, audiences considered it a massive disservice to the character. 16 years later, America attempted to make their own Godzilla, again, bringing the character closer to his Japanese roots, well, as casting Bryan Cranston, Ken Watanabe, and future Avengers Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen. Opening to decent reviews, this monster flick demolished close to 530 million worldwide, and is now planned for a cinematic universe in which it's going to smack down with King Kong. Boom! Number 5. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. After the original Planet of the Apes series ended in the 1970s on a low note, Fox attempted for over 20 years to bring the franchise back, ultimately remaking the film in 2001 as directed by Tim Burton. While it did make over $362 million worldwide, it earned more than a fair deal of criticism for its bizarre ending. All hail General Thade. It wouldn't be until a decade later that the apes returned to the big screen, this time as a prequel about Caesar and how the apes became intelligent, earning widespread praise for its visuals and Andy Serkis's performance as Caesar. Rise would go on to make over $480 million worldwide and spawn 2 sequels, the latter of which is scheduled for a July 2017 release. Number 4. Man of Steel. The Superman franchise has actually been rebooted twice. The first was 2006's Superman Returns, which came 19 years after the poorly made Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and would make $391 million worldwide, which would be solid if it didn't spend more than $300 million in production and marketing expenses. When a sequel couldn't get off the ground, Warner Brothers turned to Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer of the Dark Knight films, which is also going to be here, to craft a reboot, of which the helm went to Zack Snyder. Ultimately, while reception was mixed on the film, it still made over $660 million worldwide, and ended up launching what is currently the DC Extended Universe. Number 3. Casino Royale. The Bond franchise has seen its fair share of reboots, given its changing lead actors, whether it be from Sean Connery, to George Lazenby, to Roger Moore, to Timothy Dalton, to Pierce Brosnan. But this is without a doubt the best of the reboots. Following the CGI-heavy Die Another Day and the success of the other Bourne films, Sony and MGM went back on a younger, less experienced Bond, moving away from his gadgets and focusing on real stunts. While there was initial skepticism about the casting of a blonde, Daniel Craig, as the traditionally black-haired James Bond, the film opened to rave reviews, with Craig being one of the most praised aspects of the film, making $599 million worldwide and launching 3 sequels: Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and Spectre. Number 2. Batman Begins. In 1989, Tim Burton helmed the dark, stylistic Batman, which became an enormous success and spawned 3 sequels, the latter 2 ultimately deviating away from that darkness for an increasingly campy approach that killed the series with Batman and Robin, featuring
A bad credit card, you bastards! I'll kill you! I'll kill all of you! All of you will die!
It wouldn't be until 2005 that Batman got a second chance at the box office, under the eye of Christopher Nolan, who presented a realistic, darker take on the character. Batman Begins successfully did that, also giving us an origin about the Caped Crusader that provided new air in the franchise. While, like Mad Max, in not clearing a profit theatrically, it did give birth to 2 sequels that became enormous critical and commercial successes, creating the Dark Knight trilogy, which is widely regarded as one of the greatest superhero series of all time. And the number 1 franchise reboot is Star Trek 2009. The Star Trek franchise had petered out by 2009 following the massive disappointment of Star Trek Nemesis and the absence of any Star Trek series on television after the end of Star Trek Enterprise. However, J.J. Abrams came in and took the franchise back to the days of Kirk and Spock, thus creating a new timeline for the franchise, allowing for a fresh start and a new introduction to the members of the Enterprise. This reboot successfully paid off, becoming the most attended Star Trek to date, with over $385 million worldwide, and would go on to spawn 2 sequels and an upcoming television series, making this number 1 without a doubt. Thanks for watching, press that like button, and be sure to subscribe.